Welcome to First in the Family, where we explore the world of breaking generational chains and patterns due to access, education, will, or sheer bravery. We celebrate the ways that these accomplishments bring about joy. We honor the ways that these changes can lead to discomfort and pain. And we grieve the sacrifices that all of it requires. My name is Cecy, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining us. Let's see who's first. Today's special guest is the Reverend Dr. Charles Howard. Dr. Howard is the University Chaplain and Vice President for Social Equity and Community at the University of Pennsylvania. He has taught at Penn's College of Arts and Sciences and the Graduate School of Education. And in 2020, he was invited to assume an additional role as the inaugural Vice President for Social Equity and Community. He's also a writer and published author. His work has been featured in publications such as Sojourners Magazine, Daily Good, Christianity Today's Leadership Journal, Chronicle of Higher Education, the Huffington Post, the Christian Century, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Forward, Democratic Left, and so much more. He's the author of 5 books, including most recently Pond, River, Ocean, Rain, and The Bottom, a Theopoetic of the Streets. He shares life with his beautiful, beloved wife, Dr. Leah C. Howard, and their 3 daughters. I'm very excited to introduce you to Chaz, as I call him. Please welcome my friend, Dr. Howard. So welcome.
Well, I appreciate you. I've said it before, I'm proud of you. And you're very special to me. You are my sister, and I love you. And any project that you put your hands to is blessed. And so I'm delighted to come on this journey with you a little bit.
Oh, I appreciate that, brother. I really do. In addition to everything I just said, you were the first Black student body president at your high school. Oh, I want to hear about that. First Black man published author in your family. That's huge. First Black person to preach in a range of churches. Oh man, I need an episode for each of these. The first Black family on your street in your neighborhood. Woo-wee. The second Black chaplain at Penn. Shout out to Reverend Gibson.
My guy.
Second Black man vice president at Penn. And you added a note that you were still often the only Black face in many rooms that you occupy professionally. And you and your wife are the first interracial couple in either of your 2 families.
Yeah.
That's a lot of firsts, brother.
It's funny, I was filling out the survey. I was thinking it's interesting. I think people in our generation are very often going to be a lot of seconds. Because I think that like the half generation and generation above us very much kind of were coming after the folks who kind of integrated. So my parents' generation were a little bit ahead of like folks who were integrating schools and that kind of in real numbers. And then the generation after them were people who were kind of participating. And so it's one thing to add to diversity, it's another thing. And you teach this stuff to be included. And so I think the generation above us, Reverend Gibson, were included in a way. People generation above him, like the first people there. And so coming after Will and others, like there's a lot of my peers who are the second thing to do it. And it's a different day and age, but still some firsts, because I think there's still several parts of contemporary society that are slower to move. I mean, my wife and I, is one thing for our parents to work in like mixed jobs, but your kids getting together, like that's what worshiping together. So that those kind of things are catching up to, okay, you guys can go to school together, but don't date.
Right. So what has that been like? I mean, you said you're celebrating 20 years next month. Amen. Congratulations.
It is, good Lord, 20 years.
So what was the beginning like? to be the first interracial couple?
There's a lot to say. It- in one sense, this is the early. I met Leah in, I guess, '99, and the world has changed a little bit in some better and hard ways, but I think it was, quite frankly, hardish on our families.
Mm,
I think on my side, my sisters love me no matter what and love her very much, but it was very hard for them to be introduced to my white fiance. Particularly my whole life, I had
mm.
only dated Black and Latino women and Asian women, well, certainly women of color, predominantly Black women. And I was in one of those families of like, you can date anybody you want, just don't bring home a white girl. And like,
My family said the same thing to me.
I mean, anybody you want, don't bring somebody. And I was like, of course not. And I literally, one of my roommates in college was kind of messing with some white girl from the quad from one of the white dorms. And I gave him hell. I was like, what are you doing? Like, don't bring her up in this room like that. What are you doing? um, and the same way on Leah's side, Leah's grandmother told her to don't marry a Black guy, um, which is, what it is. And
Mm.
she had some relatives, she's Italian, and a couple of her relatives, for whatever reason, couldn't accept that I was Black and told other relatives that I was dark Sicilian, that I was like a Sicilian Italian who was just darker skinned, as there some darker skinned Italian people.
Yeah.
So it's a little easier to swallow than
Wow.
this Black guy. And yet family loves, and like it's 20 years deep. Like we rarely think about it at family functions on either side.
Mm.
And yet, when I bring her to like an alpha formal, she's the only white person there. When I go to kind of some of her random stuff, I'm the only Black guy there. And we're aware of that. And that's still not easy. I think
Mm.
you add to that, to ramble on for a couple more sentences, the kind of advent of Black Lives Matter, and for her to witness me in real time processing the trauma of being a Black man who's been stopped by the cops in every city I've lived in, and have that come very close to the surface, seeing violence against Black bodies, her as a white woman and me as a Black man, was hard.
Mm.
And I think we felt the distance there. Particularly the times I've been stopped since we've been married,
Mm.
and the kind of deep pain and fear and rage that I would feel after that. And for her to she's had a very different journey with police officers. She had like officer friendly visiting her high school growing up. And I was playing NWA and Public Enemy and hated the police in Baltimore, hated them.
Yeah.
And like, I think I've had a very different journey with police as an adult colleague, but like we were really different past with cops,
Mm.
and different presence with cops in some ways, and vice versa. I mean, I think when Justice Kavanaugh was getting confirmed, and her experience as a woman who's experienced harassment as a survivor, like there was a distance there
Mm-hmm.
that was hard for me to kind of get over too. That had gender and racial dynamics. I think the last little sentence, I think, is, and then raising mixed race girls who identify as Black, but are also proud of their Italian heritage too.
Mm.
And what that means and how we're raising them.
Mm.
What it means to raise them in like a white suburb of Philadelphia at a predominantly white high school. And yet they also have the experience of being profiled themselves, and having people question their intelligence and follow them around retail stores and talk about their lips and their nose and all that kind of stuff. So like for her to raise them, certainly not white kids, it's been a journey.
Mm. Have you had mentors? Have you been kind of figuring it out as you go along? Like, how do you navigate something that nobody in your family has ever done?
We've had couples who have poured into us on the couples tip. And
Okay.
there's an older couple from one of our churches, an older white couple, who have talked to us about being husband and wife. I have one of my aunts and uncles, my uncle since passed away, but sort of seeing them as an older Black couple who stacked up 50 years, like that was a blessing to have them kind of mentor us relationally. But we don't know any interracial couples that are older than us. There have been 5 or 10 peers and slightly younger peers, interracial couples. And we can kind of have the group therapy side of like, oh, you have that too? Or she got a racist grandparent also in that whole thing. And like we've done that. But no, neither side of us, our families had any interracial marriages of the known family members. No. So that's tough.
Yeah. That sounds tough. Did it make you, like, we were just talking a few minutes ago about the beginning. I thought it was the first like 3 years, but it turns out the beginning is the first 10 to 15 years per a good friend of mine who's married for a long time. But in the beginning years, interpret it as you wish, did the challenges make it hard to stick with it? Did you question whether or not this was the right decision at all?
Not once, no. I think she's my best friend and my love, and like I think we both felt very led by God to this relationship that always didn't make sense. I mean, she was, I think today I see her and certainly something clicked. I feel like she's the most beautiful person I know. But no one would have said she was my type, kind of whatever that means. Like I don't think I was ever attracted to a white person before. I certainly didn't date anybody. Like it was, it was a surprise. But now on this side, like I just love her very much, and I miss her when I'm at work and she's at like, and we laugh a lot, and we've been through a lot. We've raised kids and all the ups and downs, and we've been there. We each have had like hard things happen in life that not once have I been like, what did I do? That doesn't mean it's been easy. I mean, I think there have been some really, really hard situations to be Black in her white world. I know she would say the same thing too about her coming to visit family and preaching Black churches and things. Like it's not easy.
Yeah.
But I would do it again. And it's been wonderful. So I'm not once did I feel like I'm not sure this is gonna make it. I ain't going nowhere. Like nobody else, I don't think anybody else would take me. And like, she ain't put me out yet. So it's good.
No, I mean, I guess I wasn't necessarily questioning your commitment to her, but life is hard, man. And with enough people in your ear being like, I don't know. I don't know what people were saying to you, but the assumption that maybe there were people sharing opinions. Were there people sharing opinions as to like whether or not you should stick with her?
Well, I think particularly when we were engaged, I think you and I have some mutual friends who were like, you sure you want to do this, bro? Like, this is just not, like, what will this mean for your journey as a Black man?
Yeah.
In the Black community and professionally? Like, why are you doing this? Like, it's stuck too late to get out. 100%. And I don't think she had people dissuading her from marrying me, but she had a lot of questions. I mean, particularly at that time, yeah, sure, I had like a college degree from Penn, whatever, but I was in seminary. I was like training to be a minister. And when we got married, certainly when we got pregnant, I had no job. Like a Black orphan from Baltimore who had like a part-time gig at the hospital a little bit here, and the future just did not look very bright. And he's like, you marry that, It's like, it's
He
just
ain't got
wild.
no job.
He got no job. And like, and most of them like a preacher, like who's making preacher money, and like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
So I think people were confused. Like, what is it was also very fast too. Like I knew her for 3 years, but we started dating in July and we got engaged in August. And
Wow.
so there were boys of mine who I was telling I was engaged, like, I didn't know you were dating anybody. Like, who? She hadn't hardly met nobody. And her girlfriends were like, I thought you were just with this other cat. And literally in June, you were this bull, and now you're engaged 2 months later. Like, did I miss something? So,
So everybody thought y'all were crazy.
100%. And we tell the girls the story, and they're like, what? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why'd you marry daddy?
Oh man, I love that. What do you think it was so challenging for each of those families? I mean, maybe it's obvious, but I'd love for you to kind of articulate, especially for those who might be listening, who might be navigating the beginning of their first, right? Like what is it that pushes people to say pretty, hurtful, maybe well-intended, I don't know, but ask painful questions, say hurtful things, and question it.
No, it's a good question. And I think I, as far as I can, certainly understand it from my sister's perspective and from the Black women in my life. I think it felt like a very personal rejection.
Mm,
Women of color are in so many ways so often told that they are not beautiful enough, whether that's Barbie dolls to movies and TV and advertising. And the world's a little better today than it was before, but it's still, beauty standards are traditionally white women. And certainly when we were growing up, it was kind of white blonde women. And so girl and then woman of color perpetually is told you are not the standard of beauty, at least by the white majority in this country. And so that people internalize that by straightening their hair and wanting to kind of straighten their noses and dress a certain way and talk a certain way and whatever.
mm,
And then when a Black man chooses as a life partner a woman who is not us, it's like, oh, you also don't think I'm good enough for you.
mm,
Um, and like, I hear that. I mean, I think I have known brothers who refuse to date Black women because they don't think Black women are attractive. I think that's a very, very, very small number of people, but they exist, and that stings. That was never the case with me. In fact, like, again, I never hardly talked to any white woman who was in that way.
mhm,
But I know it was received that way by some of the Black women in my life. One. On the white side, I think so many white people don't know any Black people, or really any non-white people,
mhm,
that the social construction of Blackness is formed by movies, 11 o'clock news, whatever. Black men are dangerous. They are less intelligent. They are hypersexual. They're good athletes. They dance well. Like, but they're this and they're this. And like, you want to marry one?
right.
And the only Black guy I've known was Michael Jordan or whatever, or that this one guy I met once. And therefore, they were just ignorant and weren't sure what to make of me. Even with the degrees, even with whatever, I was a Black dude. And I sort of present very urban, certainly very Philly Black guy with beard and tattoos and my dress and my speech, like all that stuff, that often the negative connotations are the first thing one presents. And there's a literally a prejudice, a prejudging there that is a racism that makes people a little nervous about their friend dating, let alone marrying somebody. And it's messed up. It's really, really sad. The other thing I think as a parent now, I get we imagine what our kids' lives are going to play out as: job, personality, spouse, joy level. And when that kind of veers from the vision we have in whatever category, it's a lot. And I'm sure they imagine like little Liam getting married someday and having kids. I don't think they're imagining me do that. And that said, my mother and father-in-law are wonderful and they've been nothing but good to me these 20 years. And I love them very, very much. And they are family to me. They are mom and dad, 100%. But I'm sure I'm not what they were imagining when, they were praying for their kids' future husbands.
I hear that. What do you think being part of this marriage has? And I don't want to reduce Leah to just a white woman, right? Like she's so much more. And I don't want to reduce you to just, right, like a Black man, but it's a major part of your identity, an important part of both of your identities. And I'm curious about sort of your identity as a Black man marrying a white woman. What has been sort of the joy of experiencing that, right? Like experiencing white culture or, white families. Have you sort of gotten access to seeing another world or something that maybe you didn't appreciate before by participating in this marriage?
Very interesting question. I mean, I think I was mostly drawn to Leah's faith, and which has ultimately been the bedrock of our journey, is our shared faith and her like deep devotion, and then her mind. I mean, she's batty, she's fine, but
Hey now.
she's really, really smart, and I think I really love being married to someone who's smarter than me. Like I really love that. And like we still have good long conversations about everything. So I love that. But I also like, as much as I talk about her and white folks sort of being ignorant to Black people, like I was going to say my whole universe is Black. That's not true. I went to a white prep school, went to a white college, but my social networks, like my family, my neighborhood, my friends in high school were all Black. At Penn, I sort of lived a very Black existence, like white classes and classmates and president and teachers and every picture on the wall. But I lived in Du Bois College. I was on a Black frat. I was in a Black acapella group, an Africana major, like all of that. It was as Blacky Black that could be in college. And then to meet Leah's Italian family was just very new to me. And I just didn't know a lot about, I should say, Italian American culture. So I've learned a lot there. I think kind of meeting her relatives in Rochester and California, like, has shown me a different part of America. And I think learning about the Italian immigrant experience has been very moving to me. You sort of hearing about her great-grandfather who comes to the States not speaking English, and he's like put on a boat by his family, kind of like brave when he comes over here, I guess, with the siblings, and works in a mine and marries another Italian woman, and they have his grandfather who doesn't speak Italian, but he understands Italian, and marries another Italian woman, but her grandfather's from Sicily and her grandmother's Neapolitan, which is essentially an interracial marriage in a lot of ways back then. And then they have Leah's dad, who doesn't speak or really understand Italian, but is very Italian American. And that was a big part of his life coming up. And he marries a non-Italian woman, which was really out of bounds in a lot of ways, but a white woman. And then they have Leah, who, I don't want to say is barely Italian, but like it's not very important. Like she's never been to Sicily, certainly doesn't speak or write or understand Italian. Um, I think it's sort of grateful for the story, but doesn't feel like a sort of nationalism or an
Yeah.
allegiance to our ethnic group. It's been moving to sort of hear that journey,
Mm.
because the immigrant experience is not a part of my journey. We didn't choose to come here.
Right.
Like, we were brought here, um, and somewhere in there, someone violated one of my ancestors and sort of put a light skin streak in part of our family tree, whatever. So that's been a part. That's been a joy. Um, I also like love her siblings. Like, there's my brother, my sister. Like, those are
Mm.
my nieces and nephews, and um, that's been lovely too. I think the last little thing, as someone who lost both of my parents in a interesting way that was kind of restored to me, having my in-laws who certainly aren't my birth parents and aren't raising me, but like love me like a adult father and mother, and that's been grace. It's been nothing but grace. I never knew my grandparents, and like Leah's grandparents, I'm sure the grandfather now is still alive, and like
Mm.
that's crazy to me. Like, it turned 98 yesterday. That was bananas.
Wow. What a blessing. I love that. I love the deep appreciation for history and the origins of how she came to be. Because I find in my work with white folks, because I think a lot of the diversity and inclusion work I do is with white people.
Mhm.
Um, a big part of that, like in addition to the education, right, and like giving folks the 101, but a big part of the way I work with people is letting them know that the first thing we're going to do is introspective, and we're not just going to read the books and talk about the interesting question. We'll do that later, but the first part is introspective. And um, a lot of the white folks come to me with this sort of like lost identity, and they're like, well, I don't have a culture, I'm white.
Yeah.
And the first thing I do is like, I'm like, well, let's dig deeper, because you do have a culture, and it's a beautiful thing, and I want to explore that together before we can engage in learning and appreciating and seeing other people's humanity. You got to find your own. And so
Why do you start there? That's an interesting jump off spot.
I start there because my philosophy, and this is not everybody's approach to this work, but my philosophy is that in order to really be able to receive these ideas of humanizing, right, folks that either subconsciously or consciously you have been dehumanizing,
Mm.
you first have to recognize the ways that you have done that to yourself. And it starts with your own origin story. And people will share immigrant stories, or, the struggles of early European settlers, right? Like like Italians you mentioned, like they went through it, right? For a long time. If you were Italian, you were not white.
They're not one of them.
You're not one of us. Exactly. Irish went through that, right? Like, and even folks who don't identify that way. I'm sure my kids are not going to be like, yeah, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. Like, I'm sure they're going to be more in the Leo maybe, or their kids, I don't know. But there's so much power to learning about your own origins.
Yes.
And as you engage in that process, even if you don't feel that patriotism, even if you're like, I don't know, I think my grandfather did this, I think my grandfather, that produces emotions and thoughts and ideas in your brain that it can only lead to compassion, to rethinking the way you thought about your own life, right? Your own upbringing. Why did your parents go to college? Why did your grandparents go to college? What enabled them to do that? Did they get the GI Bill? Did something else happen? Right? Like exploring all those things, I find is a much more personal segue to understanding the origins of a whole people that have been disenfranchised.
Brilliant. You're good at what you do. I mean, and because you're right, it's to say I don't have a culture is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the trauma I think that a lot of my friends and I have is like not knowing where we came from. Like this part of Africa, kind of, maybe over here, I think, is very sad. We can only trace our family tree back to like North Carolina 4 generations, maybe. Like there's something really sad about that. And it's also sad when white folk are, quote, just white. And I think that's more of a conviction of American forced assimilation and, refusal of ethnic stuff, even white. But you're right. Like one has a very different well of compassion when they also have a story of being systematically locked out and othered and stereotyped and, killed. It's a different understanding when you hear about what's happened to Italian, Irish, white Jewish, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And I tread lightly, like we were talking about earlier, because I don't just poo-poo the way D&I work has sort of shifted, but and I respect it, right? Because I do think that there are moments in history that require a different level of aggression, enthusiasm, passion, right? Like, and there's a time and a place. I don't walk around and go, oh, relax, guys. Be nicer to them. They mean what, right? Like, I don't I don't do that. But when I get phone calls, I'm very honest. I'm like, this is the way I kind of lay things out. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to do this like whole psychological journey. They're like, just give me the list of books, give me the articles to read, and I'll be on my way. I don't do that. I'll just be like, it sounds like you're looking for somebody else, and there are plenty of folks who will give you those lists.
I had a debate with a friend of mine who talked about the most effective way to respond to like neo-Nazis is to punch them in the face. and I mean, this is sort of like after the UVA or the Charlottesville tiki torch thing, and like one good jab will send a message, and I bet you they won't be at the next one. And the catharsis that comes from exploding on somebody, and like they're being jerks about this thing, and you can't reason with violence like that. Like, you just got to do. And like I have certainly had that urge, in the face of bigots who have been in my face. I also don't want to lose hope. That I don't think anyone is beyond redemption, or beyond learning and healing, and growing. Even the worst of us, even the kind of full out bigot. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen people change their tune, and most people aren't that far off. I mean, I think there's the kind of ignorant person who just needs to learn and kind of be exposed to stuff, as opposed to like, you can't live in our society anymore. I mean, I think maybe some people need a timeout, but I don't want to give up on people. Ain't giving up on me and my bad stuff. So
yeah. I hear that. I'm gonna keep us moving, because I'll be like, and another thing.
Oh wait, it's your show. You're allowed to say another thing.
I know. Oh man. Now you work in academia. That's a whole nother episode right there. I know Penn is like your backyard. You've been there for a while. You've been there as a student, as an alum, as an employee, all the things. Now as one of the leaders of the university.
Parent.
So they tell you. But I'd like to, in the same sort of vein, what has that been like to kind of be that first or second Black chaplain, but having that, like you mentioned, like there was a different sort of charge for you than the first Black man, right? Like there was a different context, there was a different world, different society, and yet you're still the only Black face in many rooms. How are you navigating all of that?
It's hard, I mean, it's wonderful and hard. There are layers to it. I mean, I think Penn is home in that I've been affiliated with the school like 27 years. And there's a love of it that I have, like I will always love Baltimore. Like I love Philly. I will always rep both of them. And like Penn is like in that category of, I can say something bad about Baltimore. You can't say something bad about like that's like I can know about Penn. Don't talk about Penn. Like so it's become family to me, which makes it easier to kind of love it and to serve it. And yet no one hurts you like your family can hurt you. And I think the next part I would say would be moving from being a student, and particularly kind of like a student activist who kind of raised a lot of hell as a student, to then working for it is complicated on a lot of levels. I mean, I think there's the kind of, you come behind the curtain and you sort of see that things are more complicated than I thought as a student. And the leaders of the school aren't supervillains like I thought they were, who were, trying to get as much money as they can and pollute the planet. And like, it's just, these are just decent human beings. But you also see how the sausage is made too.
Yeah.
And that's tough. I think the third thing I would say though is one has the normal challenges of being Black in leadership, of being of color in predominantly white spaces, of dealing with microaggressions and lack of inclusion, and some of the same stupid things that Black kids are experiencing in their white school. Can I touch your hair? And what do Black people think about this one? And like, can I say that word? And like one still experiences in professional life. I literally have colleagues who have people ask if they can touch their hair, like grown, whole adult women. We're still going through that thing. And like, it's as if we were back in middle school. Again, these are minorities of people, but that's still there. I think the other and heaviest side of it is the burden of wanting to fight for our people. / people expecting you to really represent, and if Penn ain't doing something for us, then you're a part of the problem, and you've sold out, and you have like left us, and you work for the man now, you work for the system now. So I think that's hard. I think as somebody who identifies as sort of a Black leftist socialist, working for an extraordinarily affluent, predominantly white institution is complicated, existentially complicated. A place that has billions and billions of dollars in the bank. As someone who is on sort of the left fringe of politics, really, really hard, So like, and some of my best friends are there. Like I deeply love a lot of people I work with. and many of whom have known me for most of my life. People who were at my wedding and have helped my kids, and who are godparents to my kids, and who I've married, and I'm the godparent to some of their kids. And like, it's family too. And it's a complicated place that some things I really disagree with and I'm fighting for on the inside. And like, I'm gonna have a party in a couple of weeks and have a lot of people over my house. Like, it's complicated.
How do you, those moments of feeling like, am I a sellout? Am I working for the man? How have those moments, have you seen them through, and how do you kind of like talk yourself off the ledge, so to speak?
Yeah. I don't use this example to communicate that I'm at all on this level, but I think you'll see the connection. I mean, I think about, the journey of John Lewis and Andy Young and others, and Jesse to a certain extent, like from the streets and being outside activist agitators to then like working in Congress and in elected officials, and Jesse kind of on Wall Street and stuff. Like, did John Lewis and Andy Young sell out? Or is it like another chapter in their journey of fighting for liberation? And now they're kind of fighting on the inside. I don't think anybody would say John Lewis sold out. Like, I think he certainly voted for some things he probably shouldn't have voted for, but he was fighting on the inside, and I think of my journey like that too. Of, there's still things I will go out there and protest and risk arrest for and all this. Not at Penn, because I go into the meeting and can try to fight for that change, but it's a different chapter where I can sort of wrestle with our university president and the provost and the board of trustees and others around our investments and around our response to the public education system and public housing and other sort of challenging issues. In a meeting, I can text my friends in central administration and talk to them about that kind of stuff from the inside. John Lewis didn't need to like march on Washington. He has the keys, had the keys to Washington, And it was also in a different gear. It's a different season of life. So I think of that I'm in a different season than I was in my teens and 20s and even 30s in a certain extent. That, there's part of me that's still about that life, but this is where my path has led me now. Which is crazy. It's just to be able to try to speak around morality and good citizenship to billionaires on our board of trustees. And Penn has more billionaires in the world than any other university in the country. For a kind of semi-closeted socialist to be able to lovingly push them in a different direction, it's kind of what I wanted. Like, I can scream till I'm blue in the face from outside and they ain't gonna listen. But if they know that I actually care about them because I'm doing their grandchild's wedding, and I can also talk to them around like, hey, look, I'm not gonna put you on blast on Twitter, but I think fossil fuels are kind of killing us. That's it. I can certainly take the trolley sold out, homie. Like, what are you doing there? I get it. It comes to the territory. But I think we're making change. The last thing I'll say about it, when I was offered the job, I really didn't want to take it because of this. And I talked to two people, and one was the former provost, Wendell Pritchett, my guy, his brother. And he said, Chaz, like, I just think that you can do a lot more good from the inside than you can from the outside. He's like, and it's hard, and you are risking losing your soul. But if you can stay grounded, you can do a lot more good in here with all of this and you can't out there sort of waving your fist.
Mm.
And then the current DA in Philadelphia, I didn't talk to him, I saw him in his documentary. He said, anytime the movement has a chance to go inside, take it.
Mm.
And Krasner, a leftist, activist attorney in a lot of ways, who became DA of Philadelphia, not without controversy here, but like what he, not perfect by any stretch, but has done a whole lot of really, really good stuff around like stuff he was fighting for, pushing back on mandatory minimums. People who are in there for like a nickel bag a week, like that's not a violent criminal. Like let that dude out. Like let people get on with it. Like really, really good stuff. He brought the movement from the inside. Now, don't lose your soul while you're in there.
How do you not lose your soul?
It's kind of full circle. You marry well.
Mm.
It's been a gift to be married to somebody smarter than me, who loves me and knows me, and can check me when, like, I'll give you a real-time example. I was approached about another job that was a really great opportunity.
Mm.
And this other institution, their president called me after the whatever and said, we'd like to make you the highest paid chaplain in the country.
Damn.
And, I mean, they were offering stupid money, like generational money, to like be chaplain, which is craziness. And it's very tempting when you got a kid about to have 2 kids in college and whatever, got supporting other family members. And Leah was like, I just want to remind you, Che, I just want to remind you, like, this is not why we're in it. We're not in this for we're not in this for the money. And you're certainly not in ministry for the money. So
Wow.
that has helped. I think, I think a clear-sighted view of the Jesus movement speaks to this notion of not losing one's soul along the way. And so staying grounded in the soil that I've been planted, which is sort of the way, the sort of Christian faith, has allowed me to try to be faithful when walking through complicated spaces. More than anything else. No, that's more than anything else that has been the key to my survival and whatever success I've had.
Beautiful words. I wrote that down. Stay grounded in the soil you've been planted. Last question.
Why?
I don't know, because I don't like to go over. Fine, I got 5 more. Now that you are a parent of an adult.
Don't say that.
That's wild. Now that you're a parent of an adult, you're a parent of a soon-to-be college student adult and a little one.
Hey.
I'm particularly curious about what that shift has been like for you as a parent of a biracial daughter, of 3 biracial daughters, but of 1 biracial adult, navigating the same world that you've navigated for a long time. Has that changed anything for you?
I think one feels a greater urgency to change said world when you have little people who sit at your table every day navigating it. It also motivates one to live. I think there's this, I didn't think I was going to make it till 30, as a Black guy from Baltimore. I just didn't think that was real, no matter where I went to school. When you have people to live for. Like, I'm trying to hit 100 now, and I know I need to choose better food sometimes and take it easy on the tobacco every now. Like, I get that, but like, I'm trying to hit 100 and see my great grandbabies, and so I think that's changed. I think it's also, I think I've changed around gender, and I'm still learning, but I'm learning a lot more about the experience of being a woman, someone who identifies as a woman in this world. I went to all boys school, all boys camp, frat, all that stuff, like, and raised by a woman, my older sister, but I think living with women and only women and girls I've learned a lot there. I'm still learning. And I think seeing them navigate race has been profound, and I've learned a lot. I think seeing them kind of learn what it means to be not white, and seeing them kind of go through the burdens of that, of them having like a very early awareness of race, how their friends didn't. Seeing them navigate the challenges of like, who do I hang with? My Black friends or these little white friends in my class? And who do I want to date? Is been interesting, and the kind of multiracial journey is, I certainly had mixed friends growing up, but not a lot, and not like this. And as much as I think they identify as Black women, they are also mixed Black women. And what does that mean in the Black community? And what's that mean in a quickly growing multiracial, multi-ethnic community as kind of its own identity? And so, I mean, there's one point, one of my daughters had like a crew of mixed kids, and like a couple different combinations. And that was the crew. It was like, historically, you had to choose kind of like, you're gonna be with us or whatever, you're gonna pass or you're gonna be. And now, like, they're just a squad of like mixed kids who get each other and understand the comedy of going to one parent's family to the other family there, and people asking, what are you? And presuming you're certain things and speaking certain languages to you. And you're like, I'm not that. And like, that some other kids just didn't understand. I've learned a lot watching that journey from them. And it's changed me.
That's beautiful. I love that they have formed their own tribe.
There's so much of me that is cheering for my side a little bit, like, when Rissa starts college, I'm like, so are you thinking about Greek life at all? And AKA Zeta, like, and she's like, maybe, or, maybe also like Kaio, or try it out. And like, maybe I'm like, okay.
that works.
That's a sorority too. That's right. She chose not to pledge, which I was like, if you're not going to be, one of these, I'd rather you not do anything. That's whatever. That's been letting them go on their own journey.
Yeah.
And loving them no matter what. Those are my girls. They could live a very different life from mine, and that's my kid. Those are my kids.
Yeah.
I've tried to communicate that to them. Like, my love for you doesn't depend on what you do or how Black you are. Like, I love you no matter what. I would die for you. Like, it doesn't matter. So yeah.
I love that. Well, you can let your daughter know that Lambda Theta Alpha is Latin by tradition, not by definition.
LTA, and you don't have to be a freshman to pledge. So that's
do not.
They take old head juniors and seniors.
You actually can't pledge as a freshman. See?
You may have to, I was asking me, I have to get on the phone, talk to somebody that's I would support that. I'd be good with that. I'd be good with that.
What advice do you have for anybody that might be listening who might resonate with either being in a biracial marriage as the first, raising biracial children, being the only Black face in professional settings? What words of wisdoms can you impart on listeners who relate?
Let's say something about love and freedom. You know, let love be the compass, let love be the guide. And that's the most important thing, you know, to impress anybody. You know, if one's heart, I often say one can't help where their heart lands when it comes to relationships and even vocation. You know, I think you and I talk to young people, and particularly the young creatives whose parents expect them to be doctor, lawyer, or whatever, but they really want to be a dancer. Like, you can't help where your heart lands job-wise. And the same is true relationally. Like, you fall in love with somebody who's not exactly who your parents thought, be it same-sex marriage or different racial, ethnic, just like, you can't help where your heart lands. And follow love. The other thing, man, like my sister used to say, like, you know, this is such an old country phrase, but she said, you don't have to do anything but stay Black and die. And which is such a like old Southern thing to say. Yeah. But connected to that, I had a mentor who used to be like, the goal is to be a free Black man. Who is not beholden to the white gaze or to this system here, and is not afraid to be who you are. Yeah. I think I would formulate that into advice as well, is to be free. And, you know, no one owns us. And to always be, I mean, there's an air of privilege in this, but to always be able to walk away if you need to. And to always be able to speak up and not take that, you know. And so I try to every day, as much as I can, be a free Black man who's led by love. It's got me this far. And very far that is. I'm proud of you, brother. Thank you for those beautiful words. Proud of you. You already know. Thanks for letting me be a part of the show. Man, I'm so happy you did. Thank you for sharing so much of yourself and family and all the things. What I'm taking away from today is the importance of having a foundation, a grounding force. You found that in Leah. You mentioned faith a lot. 100%. Others might find it in their art and something, but the importance of navigating any tough thing with a solid grounding somewhere, somehow. I really appreciate just the reminder that, like, we can't go at it alone. Because I think sometimes we get ingrained with the notion of, like, you gotta keep grinding, you gotta do it, you gotta. So I appreciate that. I heard grace a lot in there, and that I feel like that's always a reminder for me as a new member of the South. The importance and the beauty of grace, because it does give you access to so much more when you can make that step. And your final words of love and freedom, I think that's it, man. Using love as a compass, man. I think that's the key. And people, I don't know, sometimes they go astray there, or maybe it sounds cheesy, but I really do think that's the key. It's easy to wander off the path if we let other things lead us.
So true. I love you.
You know, I love you. Hit me up when you come to Philly, yo.
I definitely will. Um, I want to tell our listeners and watchers if there was anything that stayed with you today or spoke to you or moved you, or if there's a lingering question that I didn't ask that you would have liked me to ask, please share with us on social media. Chaz, is there a way that people can find you, find your books, connect with you in any way?
I ain't too hard to find online. You know, I love hearing from people. So my emails on Penn's website, upenn.edu/chaplain. And I'm on I'm on Instagram and Facebook for now. I left another certain social media that is run by a certain Penn alum for for other reasons, but I can be found. And if you're in Philly, just come through. You know, we love to have people on campus, so get at me on campus.
Yes, and I can confirm that Chaz is as warm and inviting as he sounds. And you can find First in the Family on Instagram and Facebook as well, First in the Fam. And share with somebody who might be able to relate to this episode or others. Again, Dr. Charles Howard, Chaz, my brother, thank you so much for sharing your story and your vulnerability. You are truly inspiring, and I'm so privileged and honored to have you in my orbit.
Glad to be in your fam.
I love you.
Love you, Ma. Have a good night.
You too.
Peace.
Bye-bye. I want to give a big shout out to my producer, Gapi, the first in his family to be a producer. And of course, I want to thank you, our listeners, for your generosity of spirit, your valuable listening. My real hope for this podcast is that it will provide a safe and supportive space for folks like us to just interrogate and discuss and navigate the real impacts of breaking chains. My name is Cecy, and this has been First in the Family. Please tune in next week to see who is first.